We do have very different strengths and we have very different perspectives because of our background. And I think for us, that's been something that has been, like any couple, it's challenging at times, especially, when you got your heels dug in and, you're not willing to budge. But at the same time, it's also good to have perspective of thinking about things differently.
Hi, I'm Wyatt. And I'm Grace. And you're listening to Our Dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and I am back and excited about the conversation we're going to have today. This is our Friday episodes where we interview short-term rental investors that are conquering the world in the short-term rental game and sharing their ups and downs and their journey and everything in between. We got the power couple from Wisconsin, Mitch and Katie Ehly, joining us today. So guys, thanks so much for joining us. I'm excited about this conversation.
Thanks so much for having us. We're both super excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I always like just kind of the general format of these conversations. I love to start with the background. Like what pays the bills? Like what is our background professionally? What got us interested in real estate in general, and then kind of navigate into the short-term rental world. So I'd love to just start there if we can.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start. I've been in the tech startup space for about 10 years now, and that's still my primary gig. And been fortunate to be a part of a really cool startup that's had a lot of success over the last decade. And that's definitely been a really fun thing to be a part of. It's been something that I feel like I've learned a ton from that opportunity, from growing from I was the second employee at the company, growing to a much larger organization now, and it's something that's been a very eye-opening experience for me to be able to build something kind of from the ground up. And so that's kind of the quick background on me. I'll let Katie talk a little bit, and then we can talk about what got us into this.
Awesome.
So I'm on the complete other end of the spectrum. So a lot of my background is in public relations and marketing. I've worked for a lot of manufacturing and construction companies here in the great state of Wisconsin. So a lot of crisis communication, a lot of brand building, and then strategic multi-channel marketing. And I was doing that until this last November, when I had the opportunity, because of our growing companies, to leave my job and focus on, our real estate investments full time, which has been a wild ride over the last 9 months, to say the least. But it's been a journey, but it's been an amazing one, to say the least. So
awesome. Yeah, it's fun that like navigating into that, and then like having the skill sets that you guys are covering, like from both different backgrounds, everything else. I'm sure you're being able to apply to the portfolio that you guys have built and the companies you guys have built. And so it's exciting to hear those backgrounds, because it's always, there's always like lessons to learn in every journey and everything else, but it's always good to hear the background of where we started from. So did you jump right into short-term rental investing, or did you guys do any real estate investing before this?
We did not do any real estate investing before this. Yeah, it was something that we had talked about a little bit for a while. And fortunately, we had a couple of friends that had gotten into it, namely one of which we were really close with. He lived in Wisconsin. He's since moved away from Wisconsin, but he was actually the one that introduced us to Vodacy. And he had purchased a property when he was living in Wisconsin, down in North Carolina. And we spent a lot of time together, and he kind of was explaining how successful it was early to us. And it kind of like, I think, finalized the decision in our mind that we wanted to try to do something different than just, standard investment strategy that, go put your money with a money manager somewhere. And so it really kind of like solidified the decision for us that like we really wanted to do it. And for us, we wanted to find a place that was meaningful to us as a couple. And so it led us to a place in Wisconsin called Door County, which is a kind of a premier local drive to vacation destination. And it's a place where I personally have a ton of friends. A lot of my roommates from college are from there. And I've been traveling there since I was a kid. And then it was our first vacation together as a couple. And we had been going there for years together. Every year we'd go on 1 or 2 vacations there. And it was just something that made a lot of sense for us because we knew we were going to want to use it together.
Yeah. And and that is, it's interesting because, like, Door County, right? And I'm in Utah, and not a lot of people here in Utah probably know where Door County even is, right? And
Right.
I always tell people when they get started, like, where do you like to visit? Where do you like to go? And it doesn't have to be these Class A resort property towns that are like, the Panhandle in Florida, and the Rocky Mountains, or the mountains in Georgia, or the like North Carolina, some of these major markets that everybody's heard of and everybody goes to. It can be these backyard resort communities that are drivable distance to any really major metropolitan area. And people go there on the weekends. They go there on holidays. They grow up creating memories. And I love that you started there. I love that that's where this journey started, because I don't want to say like there's not underwriting involved, right? You are a numbers guy, Mitch. Like,
big time.
to say the least. Like, I know, like to the point where you're making your own software to like underwrite and organize all this stuff. Like, you're a numbers guy, but it starts before that. And I think a lot of people get frustrated with me at times saying, well, you're not, let's make the decisions based on the numbers. And I say, no, let's make the decisions based on where do you want to go? Because when you start to really enjoy that area and you understand that area, you're going to also understand the target audience, the target market, how to create the experience, everything else. And you guys know, and we'll get into the conversation down the line of what a difference that makes in the success or failure of somebody in the hospitality game, right?
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love that it started there. And then you started opening up the spreadsheets and starting to figure out, does it make sense, right?
It was a huge part of the process for me, that I'm, like you said, I'm super analytical, very numbers driven. And even though I knew we wanted a place that was going to be a place that we could spend time together, I still wanted the investment to be a positive investment for us. We still wanted to find something that we felt like was going to be a good investment for us. And so I did a lot of research. I mean, I did a lot of number crunching and, looked at a lot of different sources, and ran a lot of different scenarios. And we ended up offering on a couple places that we missed on. And then, the property that we ended up acquiring kind of fell into our laps, and, we went and saw it. We liked it, threw an offer on it, ended up getting it under contract. And that really led to a lot of changes in our life, honestly. I mean, it really did. It was, I think looking back, we maybe didn't know how much would change because of that decision, but it really opened a lot of doors in terms of just investment vehicles going forward, and opportunities for us and our family going forward too.
Yeah, it's awesome. And let's talk about how you navigate that, because you're both here as a couple and a family, and these are big decisions, right? We're making these decisions together, and are both of you like 100% driving every decision and every part of the process? My guess is you probably, Mitch, you're taking the lead on certain things, and then Katie jumps in and takes the lead on certain things, especially with, like, I'm curious when you're making some of these decisions, they're decisions we make together. And I ask this because I get asked this question a lot, like, well, I'm going to be kind of taking, the lead on this. And then, my husband or wife is going to get involved in this stage, and that's okay, right? It's okay to navigate and like take the lead in different aspects of it. And because, like, I'm sure, Katie, on the marketing side and your marketing background and branding background, you're probably really getting excited about the experience and putting all that together. But maybe on the numbers side, maybe you weren't. I don't know. Like, I'm curious on that.
Yeah, I think, the great thing is because we do have such different backgrounds, we do have very different strengths, and we have very different perspectives because of our background. And I think for us, that's been something that has been, like any couple, it's challenging at times, especially, when you got your heels dug in and, you're not willing to budge. But at the same time, it's also good to have perspective of thinking about things differently. And I came from my background. The only numbers I really did was helping write quarterly call scripts for publicly traded companies. So, things like EBITDA and margins and, nothing that's accounting terms that is not fun. And I'm not a number cruncher. And so for me, I think Mitch has been a huge help to me because he's helped me understand finance and look at numbers differently. And for somebody who's not a number oriented person, numbers were scary. When we first started doing this and talking about this, I was like, are you kidding me? We're going to spend our hard-earned money, all of our retirement to do this. And like, if this doesn't pay off, like you have those conversations of fear, mostly for me, because I didn't understand the financial aspect of it. And so, his patience, thankfully, like helped me better understand it and has gotten more comfortable with it. And I think, too, from like at least a marketing and a branding perspective and a guest experience perspective, and also just as a woman, like, we're always the ones that are always helping majority of the time, like packing the clothes and like thinking about meals and planning ahead. And so it's bringing that perspective of when he's like, we don't need a pancake griddle for our rental. And it's like, do you know what it's like to make pancakes for 10 people, like on vacation, and then 2 things of bacon, like, so it's that perspective that we've brought to each other. It's not going to be, I'm going to speak for the both of us and please tell me if I'm wrong, but like, there are times where it's not easy, at all. And, you really need to kind of find some middle ground. But I think the biggest thing is it's just the mutual respect of knowing that we have our areas of where we have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. So really feed those strengths and then work on those weaknesses together. Because I really think that's really kind of the only way that we've really been able to like move and do this is because we've tried to understand each other while also knowing what we bring to the table as individuals.
Love it. And I appreciate that part of the conversation where we're talking, because this is something that a lot of families do together. We're not talking about like short-term rentals is not like if you go to a conference where everybody's buying multifamily commercial properties and everything else. That's different. Those are just almost business decisions, right? Those are just like, hey, we're buying this. When we're putting these types of properties, it's really, really important and really valuable to have multiple perspectives looking at it and thinking about the things like the pancake griddle, and like the other person's like, I don't even think about that. Right. But being open-minded enough to listen, because just like in relationships or anything else, we're not always going to agree on everything. Right. And we got to be able to, give and take a little bit and figure it out. But that's where the ultimate product and the offer that we're putting together becomes so great, is because we're able to take these multiple perspectives. And so, and there's that fear in there too on that first one. So this is something that you guys didn't know what this was going to grow into. Right. In the very beginning, we buy that first one. Tell me, what was the time frame on the first one?
We bought it in late 2021.
Okay.
Spent a couple of months renovating, relatively light renovations, I would say, not mostly just cosmetic stuff. New furnishings, new floors. We did got all 3 bathrooms and do the bathrooms fresh. But that only took us a couple months to get through that process. And then we actually hosted our first guests, like I think over Christmas or New Year's, or New Year's that year. So we took us like 3 months or so to kind of get to that point. Right. And then, obviously started hosting through that next year in 2022.
So we're rolling into 2022 full steam, right? We're starting to say, okay, that's going to be our real first year in business. Yep. And then I want to navigate to when that, what evolved from there. But tell me if this is the case, where a lot of times when we're diving into something new, I always say that first year is kind of that year of validating whether this was a good move or not, right? We're trying to decide how close were we on the underwriting, how close were we on, predicting what was going to happen here. And it's either going to steer us in the direction of, I like this, and this was a good move, or holy crap, I made a huge mistake, right? And so I feel like that first year is kind of navigating all of that, right? Especially when it's brand new and it's our first one. And that's why I always say that gap between property 1 and property 2 is naturally the widest, because there's a lot of, even if we have a great launch, we're kind of like in the back of our minds, well, what if it tanks after that, right? So is that how you guys were navigating that first year, really kind of seeing if this was going to work?
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. It was obviously, like we talked about before, is a lot of number crunching beforehand. Came up with a million different scenarios. Luckily for us, we did have at least some solid ground to work off of for that particular property, knowing that it was an STR before.
Yeah.
So we had some financials of previous years to work off of, knowing what they were doing before. Also knowing that, the property was not anywhere near as nice as it turned out being after our renovation. And I think the strategy was just lacking generally. Fortunately for us, that is what 2022 was for. Was, okay, 2022, let's see how this first year goes with renting this property out. And fortunately for us, we ended up being like little over double what they did the year before. Well over probably 40-50% over our highest projection. So it was kind of eye-opening to us to be like, oh, okay, this is like actually significantly better than we thought. And obviously there is a lot of, bumps in the road of just us figuring out how to host. Like, we had never done it before. So
you were managing your own property, right? Let's start there. Like that, you had never managed before, and
Nope.
like you guys know, I don't manage my properties, and so you're navigating that on your own and saying, "Hey, listen, let's figure this out."
Yeah, and like things too, where I mean, obviously, it took the bigger problems for you to be like, okay, this is what we're going to do now in the future. I think some of those late night phone calls of when people are calling and being like, there's an alarm going off in the basement, and it's like, oh my god, what alarm is going off? And it's like, oh, it's your holding tank. And it's kind of then working through that of, oh my god, okay, can they use water, can they not use water, like when's the quickest we can get somebody out there to pump? It's that type of thing. But I think the other thing too is then also from a budget perspective, it's like, okay, Mitch, when we did this, Mitch budgeted, and he's like, you need to think about this house literally having a party for 3 months straight of 10 people at all times. And so it's like, when I'm like, you're taking money out of my X, Y, and Z budget to put it towards maintenance costs, and then something happens, I'm like, I'm really glad that you did that. So it's kind of also just figuring out, the other things as well of, cheaper doesn't always mean better, especially when you're having a party for 3 months in a row, because we're a really seasonal market.
Yep.
So it's like, the Amazon plates were $8, but the $20 ones that I bought at Crate and Barrel on sale are a lot nicer because they're not chipped or they're not all broke and warped away in the dishwasher. So it's those little things that I think after that first year, we really I felt like got our sea legs and got, everything up and running to the point where we were comfortable and not always checking to be like, oh my God, did they get in the door okay? Like, are they like, just that type of thing. So until I truly believe until you do it, like it's okay to have those fears and just be a little bit more, I don't want to say cautious, but just a little more on your toes about it. Cause it is definitely something that will get easier with time.
And I think too, like the successes, right? Doubling the revenue that property did and having all those wins gives you the confidence to move forward, but really having to deal with those bumps in the road and knowing that you can handle them and knowing that you can get through them, a lot of times gives you more confidence to say,
100%.
Hey, we can handle this. We can do this. And so at what point was there a certain point where we sat around together with a glass of wine and said, holy crap, let's double down and like go full steam ahead, because you guys are doing that. And so I'm curious, was there like a moment in time we did that, or did that just kind of naturally evolve?
I think it kind of naturally evolved. I think it's one of those things where like it did take all of 2022, I think, and then starting to see like Katie said, we are a very seasonal market, so we do tend to get bookings very far in advance. Mm-hmm. And so, starting to then see some of the 2023 bookings coming in and seeing, oh, okay, like we pushed our rates pretty significantly over this last year. And yeah, people are still booking 7 months in advance. Like we're filling up, so starting to see that like even further validation of like, okay, this is going to keep working. Like this is going to keep getting better and better. Initial success allowing us to like reinvest more into the property, into new amenities, new things that we can improve and offer for our guests. And so, yeah, I think the conversation just kind of continued. And honestly, it went on for probably the better part of a year and a half, but trying to find the next investment for us and where that was going to be and what that was going to look like. And, I'm sure we'll get to that eventually here, but yeah, it took quite a while for us to find the next thing.
Yeah. And like, let's navigate there. Like that was the next step, right? Is where we're to that point. And so take me through that decision-making process and how we narrowed that down and where we ended up doing on the second property.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of throughout that time frame that we're talking about, we actually had a second, an outside source that was actually part of Vodacy as well, came to us for some advice as they were looking to purchase in our market. And I believe we were the only Vodacy member in that market. And so they came to us, just to straight talk, about the market. And, we kind of became friends and started talking a lot more about what type of property he may want to purchase. And talked a lot about different properties that were on the market, ran numbers together, and just kind of kicked off a friendship, and ended up being that we found a property that he was really interested in, and he ended up getting it. And basically right after getting it under contract, he was like, you guys know that, like, I don't want to do this myself. Right. So he's like, would you guys consider helping me with it? And the answer for us at the time was very non-committal. Yeah. I'll say it was like, frankly, we never even thought about it. Yeah. So it led to some conversations between us about, do we want to get into that in some capacity? And we knew the property would be successful. It's in a very good location. It's a big property. And we knew that it was going to be successful. So it was one of those things where we kind of went into it with like, yeah, let's try it. Let's try it for one property, see how it goes, and and see what happens from there. And funny enough, the same exact thing happened again. Another person from Vodacy reached out, and so we ended up shortly thereafter with a third property that wanted to have us help them. And so yeah, we started co-hosting for a couple other people, and it's been a pretty limited thing for us. I would say we're pretty particular about what properties fit the brand that we're trying to build. And yeah, so that kind of led to where we are today, which obviously that part grew, that brand grew a little bit with that. And Katie and I continued to look for what the next acquisition for ourselves was going to look like. And just really we're struggling to find something that we were really feeling good about, both, location wise for us, something that we're interested in, and also just the deal itself. Obviously a lot had changed since 2021, and just wasn't quite as easy. And so we ended up getting some information about, potentially transitioning into a more commercial property with hotels and motels. And really we're intrigued by it, but just like it was with the first short-term rental, right? Very scary. And so we ended up talking to a couple friends that have some short-term rentals as well. And they were interested in the same stuff that we were. And so we kind of started down this road of looking into commercial assets. And we ended up looking at one property that we didn't like and weren't ready to do anything with, but it kind of like started the wheels in motion of at least getting some repetitions of running numbers on bigger properties that have more more things to consider. And long story short, we ended up buying a motel in 2023. And so we bought a 15 unit motel that's kind of a historic motel in Door County, Wisconsin. So in the same market we were already hosting in and invested in. And the property was in pretty tough shape, but in probably arguably the best location in all of Door County. It's a prime location, 15 rooms. They're all water view rooms across from Lake Michigan. And really just had we felt like unlimited potential. But it just was very, very out of date. So, long story short, we bought that in fall of 23. Spent 8 months renovating it, turned it completely around. And we launched that motel, which is called the Fresh Coast Motel, in May of this year.
That's awesome. And how was the launch?
Hard to get there.
Yeah.
It was hard to get there, but
It's hard to get to the launch. But after, you're like, okay, this is the market validated your decision.
Yeah, it did. It's one of those things where it's just like the first short-term rental. That it was like everything seems scary. The numbers are way bigger, and you're learning all new systems again. And you have to combine different systems that you're not used to combining, and figure out how everything plays together and things like that. Fortunately, we took a little bit different approach, I think, with this property. It is a contactless property. It's a self check-in model. So it's kind of like scaling out a traditional short-term rental into a motel setting. And we really took the approach from the get-go that we wanted to approach it with the four of us owners. We have two partners on it, and the four of us owners, not wanting to be tied to the property all the time. And so we built out a team, and our team has done an amazing job of handling everything. So that they can handle all the cleaning on site. They handle all of the phone calls that the motel gets. They handle all the guest communications, things like that. And it, allows us to not need to be tied to it all the time.
Right. So in that period of time, we launched a management company that just kind of grew organically. People are like, "Hey, you're doing a good job here. Can you just help me?" Right? Like, let's do it. And I know our Odyssey family loved to, the help that they're getting in that market specifically.
Yep.
And then you said something when you were going through that too. And I think this goes to probably lies on Katie's shoulders. And some of that is that you were very specific about the properties you wanted in that brand. Right. And it's something that I echo a lot when somebody is starting a boutique management company and doing that, is saying, don't take everything. Like I think one of the biggest mistakes that somebody that starts co-hosting or managing does in this game, we don't talk about this a lot because we're talking a lot about the ownership model and being out of it more of as an investor, but it's important to talk about because there's a lot of people who manage their own properties in this game. And then they start running down this road that you guys did a little bit. And the biggest mistake I think they make in the very beginning is anybody that has a property they'll take on, right? And that can really hurt the brand long term, right? And even short term, right out of the gate. And I'm like, it sounds like you guys were very intentional with that decision right out of the gate.
Yeah, and we've been fortunate where people have wanted us to co-host, but their property or the way that they're looking at their property didn't really fit. I want to say the brand itself. We have a lot of our houses are boutique houses. Like they've got high-end finishings. They sit on larger parcels of property. And so for us, it was really important that we continue to build on that and build the portfolio that already mirrors what we have in it. And I think the biggest thing is like in my days in marketing, people don't buy products, they buy brands. Yeah. So essentially you buy a brand because you can trust the product. And so with us, it was really kind of making sure that, every place that we co-hosted, and every place that we own specifically reflect that brand through and through. And I know that, at the end of the day, like financially, like everybody's out, to make money. Like when you co-host, it's like any business. But being really selective, I want to say, and making sure that you're pleased yourself and you're happy with what you're trying to promote and market at your company with, I think is just super crucial and important because it's really hard to sell something that you really don't believe in yourself. Yeah. And so it's sometimes having to have those hard internal discussions with yourself or even, your business partner to make sure that even though, yeah, financially, like it could help, if it doesn't reflect of what you're trying to build, then you're really just going to be hurting yourself in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that ultimately you hurt yourself in the long run. You're going to make more money in the long run by understanding that concept. But there's a level of like, nobody likes to turn away money or business or anything else, but there's a level of like confidence and like, empowerment when you can say, when you like stand by what your brand is and your beliefs and what you want in the portfolio, when you say no to stuff, right? The first time you say no to that, like, I'm curious, like, I'm sure you guys have had to say no to a property or two, and you say no to it. And although at the first time it's kind of scary, you're like, man, we could use that business, right? It'd be good.
Yeah.
But after it's done, 5 minutes later, you're like, man, I feel really empowered. I feel like really good about sticking by what our mission is, what our brand is. And ultimately that's going to grow what ultimately becomes a really good, solid company.
Definitely. Yeah. It's definitely something that we talked about a lot internally, and just tried to go into it, I guess, with that kind of being what the plan was, because we didn't want to, we're not trying to grow to, some company that has 500 properties or even 100 properties or anything like that. Like, we want our brand to represent a very specific type of property and experience. And, so we have had to say no to some stuff. And it's hard because I think, selfishly for us, like, I think our properties are really good, that we have. And I think they're
amazing.
The ones that we've had to say no to, I think are just kind of lacking. And I just I don't think that fits with our brand. I'm sure there's a million people that could do a great job for that type of property. Just doesn't really fit with what we've built with our brand. And so, yeah, we have had to say no to some people over the last year and a half or whatever. But I think you're totally right, Shawn, in that, when you do, it's like, that 5-10 minutes later, like, yeah, you know what? I already know that was the right call. Like,
yeah. It's exactly like, I always feel really empowered and like really you make a good decision when you make, when you are following what you say you're going to do, right? Hey, we want to be operating at the top of these markets. We want to have a portfolio and help these guests maximize, or the owners maximize their properties. And by doing that, we need good properties, we need good management, we need great experiences, great delivery on all that. And if one of those pieces is missing and it's kind of lackluster on the property side or whatever else, it just doesn't work, and you say no to it and you move on, right? And you feel good about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And so Katie, so you started like, this is what you're doing. We left the corporate world and we're all in here. Is it mostly managing the properties with the management company and Wisco hosts, or are you involved in you said that the hotel is more like, hey, listen, we've got teams there. Like what is it that you're like now, like, okay, this is replaced my income?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's a really good 50-50 mix. I would say a lot of it right now, just with it being our high season with our rentals, a lot of it is with our rentals, just because, with all of our places being full, it's a lot of guest communications. It's a lot of working with our cleaners, making sure our handyman can get in there to fix things if a drain is plugged, or, kind of like the day-to-day tasks. I would say a lot of my time, like motel wise, is one, supporting, like our virtual assistants. So our frontline individuals, when they have questions or, guests have complaints, or, just kind of working through that type of stuff. But it's also to the marketing and, the public relations plan. So with us obviously being a self-check-in motel, the only motel in Door County that doesn't have a front desk where you go and get a key and, meet an innkeeper. But also too, just really the amount of renovation we put into it and how historic the motel is was a story within itself. So really spent a lot of time this year really trying to get out there and get our story told. I think our team, we spent a lot of time with social media, like bringing people up to speed, telling them what we were doing, why we were doing it, giving them back history on the motel. And that was really a great asset for us, because then when I would go to pitch to like Milwaukee Magazine or Midwest Living, we could really kind of direct them to our social media and tell our story of what we've been doing over the last few months. But I think the other big thing too is like, yeah, it's open, but the marketing can't stop. So for us, it's doing a lot of like email marketing, talking about things that are happening in Door County. Door County's got a really lively, like, I want to say, summer atmosphere, a lot of concerts in the park, a lot of festivals. So making sure like our guests or upcoming guests that are staying with us, know what's happening, even just people who are visiting Door County but aren't staying with us.
Right.
So, it's really spending a lot of time still cultivating and building that brand, within our market, but then also to like really catering to our guests. So, some days, some turns, like I would say some days when we have a lot of turns, it can get chaotic because, between Mitch and I, one day we called almost 100 people to try to find somebody to help us with a septic issue.
Yeah.
Other days it's okay, all the houses are clean, guests can get in early, easy turns. So I think that's the one thing I love about this, with my corporate job. Whenever you ran across a crisis, unfortunately, it was usually never good. So in those high moments of stress, like they would be few and far between, depending on what company I was working for or what I was doing. But I think now my day to day, I don't know what my day is going to bring. And I really kind of like that, because it really allows me, I feel like, to at least widen my skill set. And also at the same time, like really kind of get into the nitty gritty of the businesses itself. So, one day it could be changing furnace filters. The next day it could be talking with a magazine or writing a blog. So it really kind of depends on what's going on. But I think that's the best part. So every day is not the same.
That's awesome. I love it. And you touched on so many different parts of the operations and the marketing and staying top of mind and everything else, right? They're all such fundamental skill sets when you're in this type of a business, right? And I'm curious, like, I believe that, like, whether you're in short-term rentals, whether you're in boutique hotels, the fundamentals are the same, right? It's all, we're in the experience business, period, right? And that's at the core of everything. That's what our entire world revolves around, is how are we going to create these amazing experiences? And I think you guys have done such an amazing job of that. And I always say success leaves clues. We're obviously going to post the Fresh Coast Motel on there. We'll post your Wisco hosts. That's the right name, right? I'm like trying to remember all the names.
Yeah.
So you can see these properties, see what Mitch and Katie are doing. And I mean, it's just really fun to see. And so we've got all this going. We've, I have a hunch that this is like not the end. Like what's what's on the horizon now? Like what are we looking at? What are we thinking about doing now?
I think continuing to expand both organically. I think we'd consider continuing to grow Wisco hosts with the right types of properties, and continuing to find more investments for ourselves within that avenue as well. That's part of the reason, I guess, that we kind of went with that brand name, was because, we knew that there was a good chance that we were going to want to buy more properties in Wisconsin. And so we kind of went with that brand name for a reason. And then, on the motel side, I think, fortunately for us, our first year has been really, really good. And I think we've really built, I think, a pretty tight operation in terms of how things are operating and how things are running. And I think that enables us to, at least consider the possibility of adding another property along those lines, and potentially allowing our team to reach some level of scale, and be able to utilize the same team to provide services for multiple properties. So I think there's, that's at least an option on the horizon. I'm not saying that's for sure going to happen, but it's something we could for sure consider going forward. So, I think for us, we still are most interested in continuing to purchase for ourselves.
Right.
So far as we can find something that we like and we, want to be a part of what we're doing.
Love it. Love it. And just doubling down on both of them, right? Doubling down on the ownership, doubling down on the management side of it. And it took a lot to build that, right? And there's a lot of things and kinks that you guys have already worked out. And if you can double down on that, and there's economies of scale in it,
yep.
Why ignore that, right? It's kind of, that kind of happened by accident with the short-term rental stuff. Now it's going to, you're going to start to see the same thing on the boutique hotel side, and doing that. It's pretty fun. It's really fun. I love kind of seeing these journeys evolve and just having these conversations and these conversations for me. I just feel like I'm so lucky. I just have them in, we have them in public, and so people listen in on them, right? But they're more for me than anybody else. Right. I love like getting just like following the whole journey and seeing how things just organically, come together, but then also how much intention there is along the way as well. And I think it's kind of a mix of both, and it makes the best stories. And so you guys, I appreciate you being on here. These are my favorite episodes. They're my favorite conversations. And I'm so grateful that you allow other people to listen in as well, because it is helpful. There's so many people that are sitting on the sidelines or on the fence, and they're like, man, I could do that. And I can't tell you how many times somebody calls us and tells us, I was listening to the podcast with Mitch and Katie, and I was listening to the podcast with somebody else. And I just felt like that's what I needed to like really kind of follow my dreams and try to build this. And so I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you sharing all this stuff. It's really awesome. And so it means a lot to me, but it means a lot to a lot of other people that are listening as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And thanks for having us. And yeah, we're happy to share our story, and hopefully it will be, it will help somebody else along their journey, and yeah, hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's okay to be scared, because the first time Mitch brought this up to me, I literally was like, I don't like this. Like, that's like literally
stop.
I was like, listening. Yep. I was like, I don't know. I was like, okay, we're going to have this conversation a different day. And he's like, just think about it. And I'm like, absolutely not. So, I mean, like, it's okay to be scared, especially to, and I think the biggest thing is like when we started, it was like, okay, it was a calculated risk, and any type of risk is still scary regardless. But you grow when you're outside your comfort zone.
That's awesome. I love that advice. And I love, it's just a reminder, like almost anything we want is on the other side of fear a lot of times, right? Anything that's new is going to be scary. There's never a perfect market. There's never a perfect investment. There's going to be problems along the way. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves. You're going to have to get to work. But at the end of the day, a lot of times you look back and you're like, holy crap, look what I just did. That was awesome, right? And so, yeah, I love that advice. And so this is awesome, guys. Great conversation. I appreciate you. Those of you listening, we know how valuable your time is, and we appreciate you spending it with us. It means a lot. And so if you got any value out of this show, I always ask you a couple favors at the end of every episode. First one is, if you like it, review it, like whatever platform you're watching, listening on. Those things really do help us grow the show. And we don't run any sponsorships or ads on these shows. And so the only way we grow is if you share it. So if you know somebody else that wants to be a part of these types of conversations and listen in on other short-term rental investors like Mitch and Katie that are running down the road and changing the world and changing everything that they're doing. And, those are fun conversations to be a part of. Share the show. I appreciate it. Those things help us grow. And the final, most important thing that I ask you at the end of every episode is to think about that one thing you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodacy.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.